welcome to Free Speech Radio. This is Evenings with Stephen. Even though it says mornings. Gosh. They're supposed to be evenings. Sorry about this. Not a very good start, but when you're live, what else can you do? And it is Tuesday, the 15th of December 2020. Right, well, I'm glad we got that sorted out. This evening we're going to be doing something very interesting. I'm going to be requiring your imagination. In fact, you're going to need a good imagination for this. Okay, you're going to be able to need to imagine the future and the past. And, you know, with jumps of thousands of years, we won't do too much more than that. Okay, so this is the scenario. We really screwed up something in the world. And we needed to fix it, but we didn't. And like most people died, and you couldn't really live. It was just really hard. Okay. And you're one of the top scientists in the world, well-renowned scientist, and you're there in your lab, and you see the end of human civilization. You know that, people will survive, but you won't be able to, no way you're going to be able to keep all the technologies running. Everything that they're built on has been destroyed, and you've got over the shock of it by now, but things have come to a cataclysmic point, and you've just got to grab what few things you can get hold of in your lab under your arms, chuck them in the car. Things that you know aren't going to be able to be reproduced for hundreds, if not thousands of years. What do you grab? There's an encyclopedia there. Just grab that. There's some binoculars. Grab those. No point grabbing anything that needs electricity. You don't know when you might next be able to power it up. So maybe that was all you could take. A couple of other books, and maybe, just because you were rushing, you grabbed a kettle. You couldn't think really much beyond that. You just had to get yourself out of there, but you didn't want to go empty-handed. Now, just grabbing those few things could help immensely. So this guy, he's got a boat. So he drives to his boat, unmoors it, he's got some food supplies, maybe a few weeks, and some water. He just has to get out of there so he can survive. And, a few weeks later, he finds out sort of where he is. He knows what sort of location on Earth he needs to be able, that's going to survive the change in weather. And, he sets up some sort of camp, and he's got his things, and after a few weeks he's met up with a couple of other people, and they're kind of pitching in together to be able to keep a fire going, which he was able to start with his binoculars. Um, maybe they don't speak the language. He's teaching them some of the language. And they got this book, this encyclopedia. It's got so much information in it. And before he's died, some 15 years later, the group they were with has grown. Even a child has been born in that group. And they do what humans have always done. They survive. And this was the only thing that came from the old world. The binoculars, the encyclopedia. And gradually over the years, this becomes sacred and everything, but they're still just surviving. They're still just scrabbling to get enough food to eat. But they manage. And how long would it take before you start to see an emerging civilization? And they might have copied the ways that they kind of remembered from before, making some things important, perhaps even believing in a god. Right, now you've imagined that future, that potential, possible, however unlikely future. Now cast your mind back into the past. 11,000-ish years before Christ, BC. Or just for safe's sake, go back 13,000 years. Was there a civilization advanced in many ways that had such a cataclysm I've just described of our potential future? And did someone grab a few things, jump in a boat, maybe with a few family members, restarting a civilization but without all the infrastructure they had once had? Because the answer is yes. And this is making sense of many of the enigmas we have in the world. I mentioned a documentary called Pyramid K 2019, in which they have a completely new possibility for how the pyramids were made, what technology they used. And they had technologies, they used different technologies. They used it in a different way. They weren't advanced in metals like the path we have chosen. But they could mold granite. They could melt it, heat it up, bend it. Those pyramids they made were actually poured cast concrete, not cut stone blocks. So, it keeps happening. Things happen to the earth, and civilizations crumble and have to restart. And perhaps each time we get a little bit wiser, but perhaps each time it gets a little bit more dangerous in the effects we can have on the entire planet. So, how many times has this happened before? Well, perhaps many. We've had human-like creatures around for about 1 million years or something. So have a look. Have a look at these graphs they show you, where they go back thousands of years before the present, because they took ice cores from Greenland or Vostok or somewhere, and it shows these differentials in snowfall, and they can get stuff from the little bubbles of air that was in the ice, and they can tell you what gases were in the atmosphere at the time and what levels. So anyway, you've probably seen one of these graphs, and often we either see 400,000 years back, there's lots of ups and downs, or we see this younger Dryas time as a cold spell, and then a warm spell, or a little warm spell, and what is it to be made of? So we have this dip, and the Ice Age, where you can still live on the planet, but you just need to go to more central locations. And it's quite possible that during an Ice Age, the Sahara Desert and other deserts perhaps get more rainfall, and you can live there. But this younger Dryas point, it gets very cold, and then it heats up a little bit, but then boom, goes cold again. And this takes about 3,000 years, this period. So it's like an Ice Age really, with a little warm period in the middle. So we're always talking about this. This was the last one, the younger Dryas. This is the one that would have messed up the previous civilization, sort of broke down everything they had built up. And then we have this little blip of heat, and then we're back into the what's called just into the normal time. Okay, now I've got one I'm looking at here, which is over a period of 100,000 years, and you can see about 40 or 50 ups and downs. Maybe there's like 20 peaks, but there's lots of little ones as well. But there's about 20-25 major sort of spikes and troughs, not all equally spaced. And the younger Dryas is on this map basically looks like just another one of those blips. So all those blips could have been a very similar situation to our last Ice Age, as it's called. And there's no reason to suggest that this isn't a very normal thing, that there is this constant flicking up and down. And on this graph I'm looking at present, it only looks different, really, in recent times, when we've probably got much more accurate measurements. But, well, who's to say? This is the information we have to go on. So, I mean, there's a growing consensus now, people seeing that there is a cyclical occurrence of ice ages. And of course, if you look at these graphs, we are due to go into an actual ice age, which would mean we wouldn't be able to live in the northern and southern climates without a heck of a lot of snow and ice. Now, this made me think of the animals. You know, they've been around for a long, long, long time on the face of the earth, and they have a tendency to migrate. A lot of animals migrate. So if you're quite used to moving halfway across the planet, adjusting to an ice age is not going to be an issue. Not an issue at all. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick ad break. Okay, back. Right. We were our Stone Age ancestors. It was us. You were living that life. But there weren't 7 billion of them all the time. So many of us were the animals. The animals that competed with the human-like beings. There may have been many that still thought, oh, it's better to be a lion than an ape-type creature. Or it's better to be a wolf than an ape-type creature. Or a bear. But the ape-like creatures, with their intelligence, overcame the animals, and the numbers increased. So it's more likely that you were one of these humans. Now, as humans, one of the things we did was did cave drawings. Now, I haven't checked. It's my typical sort of thing. How about we type the word swirl? And we have these swirls. So, we have many of these swirls. What are they telling us with these swirls? I'm just going to come straight out and say it. No, I'm not. I'm not. Because we don't even know. I mean, it's just a theory. But it's going to tie up with something. Now you see this in the sky, a comet. You see a comet in the sky. It's always meant a bad omen. It's always been a bad omen. Now the comet and the swirl. Now what could possibly be the swirl? Right, I'm probably being a bit annoying here. So, what we were just talking about, ice ages and the like, there are theories on to what causes them. And how they haven't really talked about the regularity. But the most common cause that people talk about is a comet. A comet smacks into the Earth, throws up a load of dust. That dust cools the planet down and we get an ice age. Okay, that's possible. Now, the new theory, or one that I hadn't heard of before, is to do with the sun. Now, you've heard of some sort of company. You've heard of a supernova. A supernova of the sun would be a catastrophe, because it would be over. But there are more types of novas, and the one in particular we're talking about is called a micronova. And we see here an image that someone has put, linking these swirly cave drawings to what a micronova might look like. And basically you've got scales from a solar flare right up to a supernova. And in between you've got a few things, super flare and super massive flare, and then you've got a dwarf nova, and then you've got a micronova. And what would happen with a micronova is the sun would do a massive burp and probably eject a lot of the heavy elements out from the core, or from deeper within the sun. Because remember, it is massive. I mean, it's 1,000,000 times bigger than the Earth by volume. So then what you'd get is, initially you'd get a lot of heat, which may be one of the prerequisites for an ice age, because you'd need a lot of heat to evaporate so much water vapor into the atmosphere, so that when it got cold and dropped to snow, it would be enough snow that it wouldn't get melted away, and therefore cause the albedo effect and put the Earth into an ice age. And that ice age wouldn't end until something else happened. So we're saying what causes ice ages, micronovas or comets? Well, they kind of both play a role. And I would say the micronovas are quite likely to cause the comet, because of ejecting all that stuff out into space. Earth is much more likely to be hit. So this is what happens. A micronova occurs on a regular basis because the sun is a cyclical thing. So it's probably about every 12,000 years it's ready to do this big burp. The Earth heats incredibly fast from the radiation, a lot of water vapor is evaporated into the atmosphere. Then as the dust and that comes out of the sun, it's obscuring the heat and the light, so it would go dark. The earth would cool. All that water vapor in the atmosphere would fall as snow, particularly away from the equator, and it would remain there. And then for quite a while there'd be a real light show, loads and loads of fireballs and meteors, but probably small, not doing an awful lot of damage. And then at some point later, so you would then be an Earth with an ice age that could last for a couple of thousand years, or 1,000 years, and then one of these comets that's now flying around can whack into the Earth, and if big enough could create enough heat to flip the Earth back out of an ice age into a warming period. And perhaps after the Younger Dryas, when you had that little blip of heat, was it nearly flipped, but then it wasn't quite warm enough, so it went back into an ice age. But by that time, people who have acclimatized, the only things that may not have recuperated as much as before was the advancement of the infrastructure. So it's quite possible that they started building the pyramids and the stuff in South America during the Ice Age, which put an end to their previous civilization. Well, not put an end to it, but, back to the square one almost. Apart from the bits of knowledge they managed to cling on to and bring with them. And I think what's happened for us is that this knowledge has been taken by the strongest person at the time. When they were in the middle of making the pyramids, another force had gathered, and even with their superior knowledge, they just didn't have the numbers to fend off this other human tribe. And they took over without really understanding the knowledge, but probably then got the knowledge and have kept it to themselves ever since. Something like that. So, there we are. And that was pretty much all I had to say today. So catch you again soon, and I'll say goodbye for now.